From a legend who owned countless platinum records to a man with only a 1% chance of survival, Randy Travis, an icon of the Grand Ole Opry, has walked through the harshest sad songs of his own life. He was once a child who repeatedly got into trouble with the law for theft and substance abuse starting at the age of 14. He was a man who endured a deeply toxic marriage, where the person who once saved his life eventually became his opponent in a courtroom. And more painful than anything else, just when he seemed to have everything in his hands, Randy Travis found himself standing on the fragile line between life and death. He was left partially paralyzed, lost the ability to speak, and even producing the simplest sound became almost impossible. At one point, doctors even told Mary Davis, his second wife, that she should prepare herself to say goodbye. Not only that, but the long years of medical treatment quickly drained the fortune of the artist who once owned countless platinum records, pushing him into severe financial hardship. Yet strangely, after everything, he still fought through the trials that fate placed before him. Before we begin this story, please leave a comment below as a small wish of peace and strength for Randy Travis. The story of Randy Travis's resilience did not begin under the stage lights or amid the thunderous applause at the Grand Ole Opry. It began in the summer of 2013, when an ordinary workout suddenly became the starting point of the most brutal ordeal of his life. That day, Randy was exercising in the gym at his home, just as he had done for years in order to maintain his health after decades of life on the road and on stage. But in the middle of the workout, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. His breathing became rapid, his chest heavy as if someone were tightening a grip deep inside. At first, he thought it was only temporary fatigue, a moment of overexertion after training. However, within a short time, the feeling not only failed to disappear but grew more severe, making each breath seem more difficult than the one before. His family quickly realized that something was not normal and rushed him to a hospital in Dallas. There, after a series of urgent tests, doctors discovered that Randy was suffering from a rare and extremely dangerous condition called viral cardiomyopathy, a form of heart inflammation in which a virus attacks the heart muscle directly, gradually causing the heart to lose its ability to contract and pump blood throughout the body. For many years before that moment, that same heart had faithfully carried him through hundreds of performances and long tours across the United States. But now, the very organ that had helped him stand strong before tens of thousands of fans was weakening with every passing hour. As the heart muscles lost their strength, blood could no longer circulate effectively, and Randy's body quickly fell into congestive heart failure. Fluid began to accumulate in his lungs, making breathing increasingly difficult. The tissues throughout his body also started retaining water, signaling that his circulatory system was experiencing serious trouble. In a hospital room, washed in cold white light, the medical team had no choice but to immediately install circulatory support devices to help maintain the heart's function while closely monitoring even the smallest changes in his vital signs. Just a few days after he was admitted, while doctors were still struggling to control the heart failure, a dangerous complication occurred. A blood clot formed in Randy Travis's heart, then silently traveled through his circulatory system and finally became lodged in his brain. At that moment, the stroke struck, violent and merciless, directly affecting the left hemisphere of his brain. The part of the brain responsible for language and movement was severely damaged, leaving the entire right side of his body nearly paralyzed. Within hours, Randy's condition became critical. His lungs began to collapse and filled with fluid, forcing doctors to place him on life support machines in order to maintain his breathing. His body, already weakened by heart failure, now had to battle a series of dangerous hospital infections, including staph and serratia bacteria, organisms capable of rapidly attacking a patient whose body was already exhausted. Doctors were forced to perform 2 brain surgeries to relieve the pressure caused by swelling in his brain, while also carrying out multiple tracheotomy procedures so that he could continue to breathe. Each passing hour in the hospital felt like a silent battle between life and death. The number of medical devices surrounding Randy Travis's hospital bed continued to grow, yet the doctor's hope continued to shrink. Finally, after evaluating his entire condition, they told the family a number that nearly shattered every remaining hope. The chance that Randy Travis, the man who once stood at the pinnacle of country music, would survive was only about 1%. It was a number Mary would never forget. After that emergency meeting, the doctors told her that if his condition continued like this, maintaining the life support machines might only prolong suffering without offering a real chance of recovery. Therefore, they were forced to raise a possibility that no wife ever wants to hear, that it might be time to consider removing the ventilator and allowing Randy to pass away peacefully. Mary fell silent when she heard those words. In the small hospital conference room, every sound seemed to disappear. She knew the doctors were speaking with complete professionalism and compassion, but her heart refused to accept it. How could she stand before the man she loved and decide that his life should end here? Later, when recalling that moment, Mary once said, "It was the worst time of my life." After the meeting, Mary slowly walked back to the hospital room. The white lights shone down on the bed where Randy lay motionless. IV lines ran along his arms. The ventilator released a soft mechanical hiss, and the heart monitor continued to flicker with fragile numbers. Mary stepped closer and took his hand. It was the same hand that had once held a microphone before tens of thousands of fans, the same hand that had signed thousands of autographs for admirers, and now it felt cold and so weak that it barely responded. She leaned close to him and whispered words that perhaps only the two of them could understand. Then something happened. Something so small that anyone else might have missed it. Randy Travis's hand gently tightened. Not strong, not obvious, just a very faint squeeze. But to Mary, it felt like a call from deep within a body, still fighting to live. A moment later, a tear rolled down his cheek. To the doctors, it might have been nothing more than an unconscious reflex of the body. But to Mary, it was an answer. The man she loved was still there, and he was still fighting. Mary straightened up and returned to the meeting room with the doctors. When they asked whether she had made a decision, she answered with one short but unwavering sentence. "We will not give up. We will fight." Yet when Randy Travis finally woke from the long coma, that was when the real nightmare truly began. His body no longer obeyed him the way it once had. The entire right side was nearly motionless, and his voice, the very thing that had once been as natural to him as breathing throughout his life, had almost vanished. Simple sentences that he had once spoken effortlessly now became a long and exhausting struggle. Sometimes he tried to open his mouth, but only scattered sounds emerged, as if language itself had become trapped somewhere inside his mind and could not find its way out. The stroke had caused severe damage to the left hemisphere of his brain, the area responsible for language and movement. As a result, Randy developed aphasia, a language disorder that meant he could still understand what others were saying, but could no longer express his own thoughts. Inside his mind, the music still existed. The familiar melodies still echoed just as they always had. But the pathway that turned those melodies into lyrics seemed to have been severed. Even getting out of his hospital bed had become a challenge. Muscles that had once moved freely across stages now had to relearn how to coordinate from the very beginning. Steps that had once confidently carried him before thousands of fans now had to be practiced again, little by little, in a rehabilitation room where every movement was repeated dozens of times so his body could slowly regain control. The first days after he regained consciousness passed painfully slowly. Every movement required the assistance of therapy specialists. Doctors helped him practice moving his arms, practice maintaining balance while sitting, and practice standing up from a chair. Sometimes even taking a single short step required several minutes of preparation and intense concentration. It was a long and exhausting journey. There were days that passed with almost no visible progress. There were moments when Randy tried to say a simple word but could not, and all he could do was shake his head in silence. Yet the next day, he would return to the therapy room, continuing the exercises as if every day were another chance to move one small step forward. Alongside the physical therapy sessions were long hours of speech therapy. In the quiet rooms of the rehabilitation center, Randy learned how to pronounce each syllable again. Sometimes it was only a single short word, but each time he could say it a little more clearly than the day before. It was considered a victory. The rehabilitation specialists understood that the road ahead of him would not be easy. But they also recognized something in Randy Travis that could not be measured by any machine: perseverance. Even when he was exhausted, even when he sometimes felt discouraged, he still returned to the therapy room the next day and continued practicing. About a year after the stroke, small improvements began to appear more clearly. Randy could walk short distances with the support of others. Those steps were slow and careful, but each one was a victory against the illness that had nearly taken his life. He also began practicing writing again. Holding a pen, something that had once been as simple as a reflex, now became an exercise that required great concentration and patience. But for Randy Travis, being able to write his first letters again felt like recovering a small piece of the life he had believed was lost forever. Throughout that long journey of recovery, there was always one person standing beside Randy Travis almost every day: Mary Davis. She was his caregiver, his protector, and the thread that kept him connected to the outside world. She was present at every therapy session, watching every small change, even if it was only a slight movement of his hand or a slow step inside the rehabilitation room. Whenever Randy struggled to express his thoughts, Mary would often gently stand beside him and help speak the words he wanted to say to doctors, to friends, or to the visitors who came to see him. Not only did she care for him in everyday life, but Mary also became Randy's voice before the public during the years when he could not yet tell his story himself. In many interviews afterward, she often said that what made her believe Randy could overcome the stroke was not only medicine or therapy, but his unbreakable will to live. There were days when he couldn't say anything, but I knew he was still there, still fighting in his own way, Mary recalled. And then, after many years of patience and effort, those efforts finally began to be rewarded. In April 2015, at the Academy of Country Music Awards, the audience saw Randy Travis appear in public for the first time since his 2013 stroke. It was an emotional moment. When singer Lee Brice stepped onto the stage and performed the song Forever and Ever, Amen, in tribute to him, Randy was brought out before the packed audience. At that time, he still could not speak or sing. Randy simply stood quietly on the stage, looking out at the crowd and smiling. But that smile was enough to make the entire audience rise to their feet in applause, because everyone understood that the very fact that he was standing there was already a miracle. A year later, an even more extraordinary moment happened. In October 2016, when Randy Travis was honored at the Country Music Hall of Fame, many people believed he would only appear to receive the tribute. But as the ceremony was nearing its end and the hymn Amazing Grace began to play, Randy suddenly began to sing. Not the entire song, not even a long line, just a single word: Amen. Only one simple word, but it was clear and complete. In that moment, the entire audience stood up. Applause filled the room, not because of a perfect performance, but because everyone understood they had just witnessed something that only a few years earlier almost no one believed could ever happen. After all those months of training, the long hours of therapy, and the slow progress, Randy Travis had finally shown the world that his voice, though changed, had not completely disappeared. To understand the tragedy that would later follow in Randy Travis's life, we must go far back in time, long before the stage lights ever found him, back to the small town of Marshville, North Carolina, where a boy named Randy Bruce Trawick was born on the 4th of May, 1959. Marshville at that time was not a place where people grew up surrounded by big dreams. It was a working town where life was measured in long hours of labor and simple dinners after exhausting days. In the Trawick family, poverty was not only about a lack of money, it was the feeling of having to grow up faster than your age allowed. Randy's mother, Bobby, worked tirelessly in a textile factory. Each evening she returned home with hands roughened by thread and machinery. His father, Harold Trawick, took on many jobs to support 6 children, from construction work to substitute teaching, raising turkeys, and breeding horses. In that small house, no one had much time left for dreaming. Yet music still found its way into Randy's life in a very particular way. Harold was a strict man, but he was also someone who loved country music deeply. Recordings of Hank Williams or George Jones often filled the house, and he required his children to learn to sing and play music with a discipline that was almost harsh. For Randy, music was both a refuge and a source of pressure. He loved those melodies, but he also understood that every mistake in singing was followed by his father's disappointment. Around the age of 8, Randy found a place where he truly felt he belonged: the choir of the local church. That small church was not grand, but for a boy from Marshville, it was the only world where his voice was truly heard. Among the hymns and the old organ sounds, Randy began to realize that music was not just a family obligation, but a language that allowed him to express emotions he did not know how to put into words. By the time he was 10 years old, when he first held a guitar, Randy felt as if he had discovered an escape. The instrument gave him a way to turn the emotions he had kept buried inside into melodies. Together with his brother Ricky, Randy began singing at small fairs, local bars, and smoke-filled clubs. For many people in those rooms, the music was simply background for drinks and loud conversations. But for Randy, every time he stood on those small stages felt like a plea to be heard. But when the lights went out, reality was still there waiting for him. Every morning, Randy had to wake up very early to work on the family farm. From caring for livestock to raising turkeys, he learned how to work like an adult while he was still just a child. Later in life, Randy would admit that his childhood was not like that of other children. He did not have much time to play or to dream, only responsibility and discipline. As he entered his teenage years, the pressures of a poor childhood and harsh discipline began to reveal themselves in a direction that no one in the Trawick family had hoped for. Randy Travis left school after the 8th grade, and from that moment on, the road ahead of him seemed almost completely directionless. Without classrooms, without the routine of going to school every morning, Randy's life quickly slipped into chaotic days where impulsive decisions gradually replaced any plans for the future. Alcohol entered his life when he was only 12 years old. At first, it was just experimentation, trying it out of curiosity. But only a few years later, dangerous habits began clinging to him like a normal part of everyday life. He was arrested multiple times by the police for public intoxication, disturbing the peace, petty theft, and driving while drunk. On one occasion, Randy took his brother's car and caused an accident. Another time, he and a group of friends broke into a local church simply to throw a party. What seemed like reckless acts of youth slowly accumulated into a long chain of mistakes, and his police record quickly grew thicker. In a small town like Marshville, it did not take long for that to become a familiar story. The officers at the police station began to recognize Randy's face even before they needed to ask his name. By the time he was 16, things had gone so far that he had to stand before a court in Charlotte, facing the possibility of receiving a prison sentence that could last for years. To many people around him, Randy's future seemed already written. A rebellious boy raised in poverty, without education, without direction, and sooner or later destined to end up behind bars. Years later, when looking back at that period, Randy Travis never tried to justify his mistakes. He spoke about that time with a blunt honesty that could send a chill through anyone listening. At that time, I never thought I would be standing on a stage. Honestly, I thought I would end up in prison. As a teenager, Randy had almost convinced himself that his life had only one road ahead, and that road was leading straight to jail. But sometimes life changes direction in a single moment. In 1975, when Randy was just 17 years old, he decided to try his luck at a nightclub in Charlotte called Country City, USA. It was only a local talent competition, the kind of event most people attended simply for entertainment. But for Randy, it felt like a final gamble. He stepped onto the stage carrying a troubled past and an uncertain future. When Randy began to sing, something in the room changed. His voice was not perfect, but it carried a sincerity that was impossible to ignore. The conversations slowly quieted. People who had been drinking stopped to listen. And for the first time in a very long while, Randy felt that he was truly being seen. In the noisy audience of that small club on that dark night, among the clinking glasses and unfinished conversations, one person paused longer than everyone else. That person was Lib Hatcher, the owner of the club. While most of the audience only saw a rebellious teenager trying to sing in a smoke-filled bar, Lib recognized something the crowd had missed. It was not perfect technique, not the polished skill of a professional singer, but a voice carrying emotions so raw and genuine that they could not possibly be faked. In that voice there was desperation, a longing to be seen, to be acknowledged as someone who mattered. Lib understood that very clearly. And she also understood something else, that if no one pulled that young man away from the path he was on, Randy might disappear from this world before he ever had the chance to become anything. So Lib did not simply applaud and walk away like everyone else. She stepped directly into his life. As Randy's legal troubles grew more serious and prison began to look like a real possibility, it was Lib who stepped forward to post bail for him and even filed a petition with the court to become his legal guardian. For Randy Bruce Trawick, the 17-year-old boy standing on the edge between prison and a different life, that moment felt like a door suddenly opening. A new road appeared, pulling him away from the destructive path that even he did not know how to escape. In the years that followed, Lib Hatcher became the almost absolute guiding force in Randy's career. She took him away from North Carolina and brought him to Nashville, where country music truly lived. She knocked patiently on the doors of record labels, searching for a recording contract, selecting songs, shaping his image, and protecting his traditional country style at a time when the music industry was increasingly leaning toward commercial pop sounds. Those decisions slowly transformed Randy Travis's life. In 1986, the album Storms of Life was released and immediately shook Nashville. Songs like On the Other Hand and Diggin' Up Bones carried the name Randy Travis onto the charts, and within a short time, the young man once known to the police in Marshville suddenly became a voice the entire nation was talking about. A year later, the song Forever and Ever Amen was playing across radio stations everywhere. The song not only brought him major country music awards, but also turned Randy Travis into a symbol of the revival of traditional country music. Audiences loved him not because of glamour, but because of his warm and honest voice, a sound that made listeners feel as though they were hearing a life story told through music. By 1986, Randy Travis officially became a member of the Grand Ole Opry, the most sacred stage in country music. When he stepped into the spotlight and heard the audience applauding and welcome, few people knew that standing behind the curtain that night was still Lib Hatcher, the woman who had pulled him back from the edge only a few years earlier. The albums that followed continued to sell millions of copies, tours were filled with sold-out audiences, and Randy Travis gradually became one of the biggest voices in country music by the late 1980s. Through all those years, Lib remained behind the scenes managing the machinery of his career, controlling contracts, arranging tour schedules, and keeping the engine called Randy Travis running. Over time, their relationship became more than just professional. After many years together, Randy and Lib married in 1991. The marriage surprised many people because Lib was nearly 20 years older than Randy and still remained the direct manager of his career. For nearly 2 decades, they were both husband and wife and business partners, jointly running one of the most successful careers in country music. But the closeness between personal emotions and professional power also made things increasingly complicated. While the stage lights shone brightly in public, cracks slowly began to appear behind the curtain. By 2010, their marriage, which had lasted nearly 20 years, ended in a tense divorce. What made the situation even more complicated was that Lib continued to serve as Randy's career manager even after they were no longer husband and wife. That arrangement could not last for long. Soon afterward, the relationship that had once begun as a story of rescue gradually turned into a series of legal disputes. The two sides took each other to court over disagreements related to management contracts, control of Randy Travis's career, and the assets connected to his name. The lawsuits dragged on for years, turning the woman who had once pulled him away from a path leading to prison into someone he now had to face across a courtroom. For many people in the industry, the story between Randy Travis and Lib Hatcher has always carried a difficult paradox. She was the first person to see the talent in a young man whom an entire town had nearly given up on. Yet, she also became associated with one of the most complicated chapters of his life. Many years later, when looking back on that journey, Randy Travis once said something very calmly. "Some people come into your life at the right moment to change your destiny. But not everyone is meant to walk with you all the way to the end of the road." After the turbulent marriage with Lib Hatcher ended, Randy Travis's life seemed to slip once again into a familiar darkness, a place where the bright lights of the stage were no longer strong enough to hide the emptiness in his personal life. The years following the divorce were a time when he seemed lost. Alcohol returned to his life, and with it came impulsive decisions that resembled the troubled behavior of his youth, the very things he had once tried so hard to leave behind. In 2012, those troubles exploded into an incident that shocked all of Nashville. One summer night in Texas, police received a report about a sports car that had crashed along the roadside. When officers arrived, the vehicle had already slammed into construction barriers in an area under repair, and the man standing near the scene was Randy Travis. He was discovered heavily intoxicated, nearly naked, stumbling along the empty road. When police approached him, the situation quickly became tense. Words were exchanged, tempers escalated, and Randy Travis was eventually arrested for driving while intoxicated, as well as threatening law enforcement officers. The news spread quickly. For many fans, it was an almost unbelievable image. The man who had once silenced entire concert halls with the opening lines of his songs was now appearing in a police report in the middle of the night on a Texas highway. For Randy Travis, it was not merely a scandal. It felt like the moment his life had returned to a road he knew all too well, the same road he had nearly failed to escape many years earlier. Looking back at Randy Travis's entire journey, his life resembles a long road filled with twists and turns. From a poor boy in Marshville to a star standing at the peak of country music, followed by years of confusion, scandal, and even a stroke that nearly took everything away from him. Yet after every storm, Randy continued to stand up again, step by step, slowly but stubbornly, eventually finding a simple kind of peace beside Mary Davis, the woman who remained when the world seemed to turn its back. Today, at the age of 66, Randy Travis lives with his wife, Mary Davis, in Texas. Their home is not the loud mansion of a music superstar, but a quiet place where each day begins with simple routines. For Randy, mornings are no longer filled with recording schedules or flights to another city for a performance. Instead, they begin with rehabilitation exercises, small daily routines meant to help his body continue moving forward, even if progress comes only in very slow steps. Inside their Texas home, Mary Davis has become almost the center of the small world Randy now lives in. She is not only his wife, but also his caregiver, his companion, and the bridge that connects him to the outside world. People who have met them often say that there is a special calm between the two of them, as if after all the storms of life, they have finally found a place quiet enough to stay. Even though his life has changed, Randy Travis has never truly left music behind. From time to time, he still appears in public, not as a performing singer, but as a symbol of resilience. Whenever he steps onto a stage, even if it is only to smile and greet the audience, the crowd often rises for a long-standing ovation. For many fans, simply seeing Randy Travis there feels like a miracle. One of the ways he continues to connect with audiences is through the More Life Tour, a tribute concert series organized in recent years. During these shows, Randy appears on stage alongside his band, while the singing is performed by vocalist James Dupre. But when the melodies of his familiar songs begin to play, everyone in the audience understands that the soul of those songs still belongs to Randy Travis. At the end of many shows, when the song "Forever and Ever, Amen" begins to play, the audience often falls silent for a few seconds before erupting into applause. It is not only a tribute to Randy's music, but also a gesture of respect for the journey he has traveled. Alongside these public appearances, Randy Travis and Mary Davis also dedicate much of their time to community work. After his stroke, they became active advocates for stroke awareness and recovery. The two frequently participate in fundraising events for medical organizations and programs that support stroke patients. For Randy, sharing his story is not about speaking of tragedy, but about showing others that hope can still exist after the greatest hardships in life. At many events, simply seeing him sitting in his wheelchair and smiling at the audience is enough to move people deeply. In addition, Randy Travis remains connected to music in a new way. In recent years, technology has allowed producers to recreate his voice from older recordings. Because of this, several new music projects have been released, bringing his familiar voice to a new generation of listeners. But for those who truly understand his story, the most important thing is not the new recordings or the public appearances. The most important thing is that Randy Travis is still here. He still walks, more slowly than before, but he still walks. He still smiles at his audience, even though his voice is no longer the same. Perhaps that is exactly what the two words he and Mary Davis often speak about truly mean. More life. Not returning to the way things once were, but being grateful simply for the chance to keep living. Looking back at the life of Randy Travis, people do not remember only a country music legend who once stood on the greatest stages in America. They also remember a man who traveled through poverty, confusion, glory, heartbreak, and even the fragile boundary between life and death, and who in the end still chose to stay, still chose to keep moving forward, even if more slowly, more quietly, and more gently than before. Perhaps the most beautiful part of this story does not lie in the awards, the hit songs, or the applause, but in the simple fact that Randy Travis is still here, still smiling, still living, and still reminding others that after every storm, people can still find peace. If Randy Travis's story has touched your heart as well, please press like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below as a small wish of peace and strength for him.